You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. These words of John in chapter 8, verse 32, carry a liberating promise, but also a profound provocation. What if the truth you so desperately seek isn't what you've always believed? What if the one who is widely revered as the Almighty Creator, Yahweh, is actually a tyrant, an impostor posing as God, perhaps even the devil himself in disguise? This is not a sensationalist idea or a cheap trick to attract attention. It is a reflection grounded in ancient texts, glaring contradictions, and stories suppressed for centuries. Consider the disturbing passages in the Old Testament. Yahweh, the God who supposedly symbolizes love and justice, commands acts that, from any other perspective, would be considered cruel and bloodthirsty. In Exodus chapter 32, verses 27 to 28, after the golden calf incident, Yahweh orders Moses to exterminate his own people, friends, neighbors, brothers, it doesn't matter. 3,000 people were massacred, not by their enemies, but by their own. And there's more. In the book of Numbers, chapter 31, verses 17 and 18, Yahweh instructs the annihilation of the Midianites, sparing only the young virgins, destined for the soldiers. Such acts, far from showing compassion, reflect a mentality that today we would associate with tyranny. The destruction orders continue. In 1 Samuel chapter 15 verse 3, Yahweh demands the total extermination of the Amalekites, including children, babies, and even animals. Imagine the horror of innocent lives being taken in the name of supposed divine justice. How can these actions be reconciled with the image of a God of love and mercy? Why does Yahweh demand blood and destruction while Jesus preaches forgiveness and compassion? This discrepancy did not go unnoticed by everyone. In the 2nd century, the Gnostics, an influential group in early Christianity, began to question these contradictions. They believed that Yahweh was not the supreme God, but the demiurge, a minor and imperfect entity who created the material world as a prison for human souls. For the Gnostics, the true God was pure love and light, existing beyond the physical universe. This radical vision challenged the foundations of the dominant faith. Gnostic texts, such as the Apocrypha of John, contain disturbing revelations about the nature of Yahweh. In one of these writings, Yahweh declares, "I am God, and there is no other." For the Gnostics, this statement was an act of arrogance, a desperate attempt to assert a power that did not belong to him. Yahweh, according to them, was not a benevolent creator, but a jailer who manipulated humanity to consolidate his rule. Even Jesus, in John chapter 8, verse 44, suggests something intriguing when he accuses religious leaders of being children of the devil. This statement was not just an insult, it pointed to a profound disconnect between the God of the Mosaic law and the God of love preached by Christ. While Yahweh demanded blind obedience and severe punishment, Jesus proclaimed freedom, forgiveness, and reconciliation. The Gnostics not only perceived these differences, but also challenged the dominant narrative. For them, Yahweh was a deceiver, the true ruler of this fallen world, and his story was held as absolute truth by a church that preferred to bury any divergent perspective. These texts were burned, their followers exterminated, but their ideas did not disappear. The Gnostics were not individuals outside of reality creating absurd ideas. On the contrary, they analyzed the same texts that are widely read today, but they also had access to documents that the church later tried to hide. A striking example is the Apocryphon of John, a powerful Gnostic work found in 1945 in a jar buried under the sands of Egypt. This text offers a surprising view of Yahweh, portraying him as a jealous and arrogant entity. What if you could access a deeper insight into all this? The mysteries surrounding Yahweh, ancient texts, and Gnostic revelations need not remain hidden. The forbidden name of Jesus is like a map that illuminates these secrets, connecting dots that once seemed disconnected. It's at your fingertips, like a gift in the first fixed comment. Allow yourself to know this transforming truth and understand what has really been hidden for so long. In the Apocrypha, Yahweh proclaims, "I am God, and there is no other." For the Gnostics, these words were not the expression of a supreme creator, but of a deceptive being, intoxicated by his own power and determined to manipulate humanity into worshipping him. This kind of behavior didn't seem unusual to them. Throughout history, tyrants, emperors, and despotic leaders have used similar strategies. What is the first thing they do when they gain power? They demand worship, they declare themselves divine. For the Gnostics, Yahweh was just another one of these tyrants, capable of creating, yes, but still imperfect and driven by jealousy. The Bible reinforces this view in Exodus 34, verse 14. "You shall worship no other gods, for I, the Lord, am a jealous God." And this image of a jealous God was, for the Gnostics, proof of Yahweh's limited nature. What's more, they believed that Yahweh did not want humanity to know the truth about itself. This truth, according to them, was simple and revolutionary. Within every human being resides a spark of the true God, a divine essence that transcends the physical world. However, Yahweh, in their view, would have done everything in his power to suppress this spark. He would be the jailer, the ruler of darkness, determined to keep human souls prisoners of an imperfect world. An example of this, for the Gnostics, is in the account of the Garden of Eden. Yahweh forbids Adam and Eve to eat the fruit of knowledge, threatening them with death. But when they eat, something unexpected happens. They don't die, but awaken. Their eyes are opened, and they see the truth. The serpent, which Christian tradition presents as a symbol of evil, was seen by the Gnostics as the liberator, the one who revealed the truth to humanity. For them, this story was not about a sinful fall, but about the first attempt to escape from the prison imposed by Yahweh. In response, Yahweh punished Adam and Eve severely, reinforcing his tyrannical nature. For the Gnostics, this was not the behavior of a loving creator, but of a ruler who governs by fear and force. The contradictions continue throughout the Old Testament. The flood in Genesis 6 is a clear example. Yahweh decides to destroy all of humanity for not meeting his expectations. Men, women, children, all drowned in a devastating cataclysm. There was no mercy, only mass extinction. The same pattern is evident in Leviticus 10, where two priests, Nadab and Abihu, are killed instantly for offering strange fire in the temple. Imagine the scene. Two men, in an attempt to serve the God they have been taught to revere, make a mistake and are incinerated alive. This is the account of Nadab and Abihu in Leviticus 10, a swift and ruthless punishment from Yahweh. Fast forward to 2 Samuel 6, and we find Uzzah, who, while trying to protect the Ark of the Covenant from falling, is killed instantly. A reflex? An instinctive act to preserve something sacred? None of this matters. Yahweh's response is fatal. These stories defy any idea of love or compassion. They illustrate a God who puts power before people, who prioritizes blind obedience over understanding. This dynamic is not an isolated fluke. Yahweh's relationship with the Israelites is equally severe. They, his chosen people, should expect paternal protection, but they encounter merciless demands. Numbers 14 tells the story of the generation who, frightened by reports of giants in the Promised Land, question Yahweh. The punishment for this moment of doubt, 40 years of wandering in the desert until everyone from that generation died. Fear and weariness were answered with decades of suffering. Is that fatherly care? What about the blood? Yahweh shows an obsession with blood sacrifices that permeates the entire Old Testament narrative. In Genesis 22, he orders Abraham to sacrifice his son, Isaac, only to replace him with a ram at the last moment. This event is often praised as a test of faith, but what it really reflects is an insatiable thirst for unconditional obedience, even at the cost of human life. It doesn't end there. In Exodus 12, Yahweh orders the death of all the firstborn in Egypt as part of a plan to intimidate Pharaoh. Innocent children's lives snatched away to prove a point. This knowledge could change your perspective forever. The forbidden name of Jesus is available, but units are limited. Get yours now in the first comment box. Do these events reflect the behavior of a benevolent creator? Or does it more resemble the actions of a dictator who rules by fear? The violence, sacrificial commandments, and extreme punishments echo a clear pattern. Yahweh demands absolute control. For the Gnostics, this was proof that Yahweh was not the true God, but a demiurge, a powerful but flawed figure who manipulated the physical world like a prison. This view challenges the central notion that Yahweh and Jesus are one and the same. Jesus, on the other hand, presents a completely opposite message. The Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5 is a clear example of this. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. A central principle of the Mosaic law in Exodus 21 is rejected by Jesus. He offers an alternative. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other also. This is not a simple reworking of the old laws. It is a total rejection of the principle of revenge, replacing it with forgiveness and mercy. While Yahweh demanded ruthless justice, Jesus teaches radical love. These differences are not just variations in style or interpretation, they represent a fundamental break. Jesus did not come to reinforce Yahweh's laws, but to tear them down, line by line, bringing a message that challenges everything the Old Testament taught. And there's more. In John 8 verses 3 to 11, we see a revealing confrontation between Jesus, the Pharisees, and Yahweh's law. A woman caught in adultery is brought before Jesus. The Pharisees, sure of their righteousness, quote the law of Moses. The law commands us to stone these women. They are right. Leviticus 20 verse 10 decrees that adultery must be punished by death. That is the word of Yahweh. However, Jesus' response directly defies this law. He not only ignores the rule, but dismantles its basis. Kneeling down, he writes in the sand and declares, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." One by one, the accusers leave, unable to sustain their morality in the face of that truth. At the end, Jesus looks at the woman and says, "I don't condemn you either. Go and sin no more." This moment is more than an act of mercy. It is a break with Yahweh's system of justice. The execution that Yahweh ordered, Jesus denies it. The blood he demanded, Jesus refuses it. This confrontation goes beyond an isolated episode. It exposes the disparity between the God of Jesus and the God of the Old Testament. Yahweh is presented as a ruler whose law is inflexible and merciless, while Jesus reveals a path of compassion and redemption. This difference was not lost on Jesus. In John 8 verse 44, he looks directly at the Pharisees, the defenders of Yahweh's laws, and calls them children of the devil. It's not a casual insult, but a profound statement. The Pharisees, devout followers of the Mosaic laws, are accused of serving a dark force, opposed to the true God. Jesus draws a clear line. Yahweh's system, based on fear, punishment, and blood, is not divine. He points to something much greater, to a God who is light, love, and spirit. This tension between Jesus and Yahweh is evident in passages like John 18 verse 36, where Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world." Yahweh, on the other hand, rules this world, demanding worship and absolute control. Jesus did not come to reinforce Yahweh's kingdom, but to liberate humanity from it. The Gnostics understood this clearly. For them, Jesus was the liberator, sent to rescue humanity from the clutches of the demiurge. This perspective also sheds new light on Judas Iscariot, a traditionally villainized character. The Gospel of Judas, discovered in Egypt in the 1970s, presents a completely different narrative. Judas is not the greedy traitor that tradition has taught us to hate. Instead, he is Jesus' closest disciple, the one who truly understood his mission. Don't miss your chance to explore these secrets before the units run out. The forbidden name of Jesus is waiting for you. Find out more in the first fixed comment. While many fixated on earthly perceptions, clinging to the imperfect world shaped by Yahweh, Judas saw beyond the illusion. In the Gospel of Judas, one of the most revealing Gnostic texts, Jesus entrusts him with a crucial role. You will surpass them all, for you will sacrifice the man who clothes me. These words are not just symbolic, they carry a hidden truth. The man who clothes me refers to Jesus' physical body, seen by the Gnostics as a prison imposed by the demiurge to contain the divine spark. Judas was not a traitor motivated by greed, but a faithful ally who understood Jesus' mission. For the Gnostics, the physical body represented a trap, a link to the material world created by the demiurge. Jesus, however, came to free souls from this prison, to transcend the body and return to the true God who is beyond this universe. For this to be possible, Jesus had to be put to death, and Judas was the only disciple capable of carrying this responsibility. This idea completely defies the traditional narrative. For 2,000 years, Judas has been portrayed as the villain, the man whose betrayal led Jesus to the cross. However, without the crucifixion, there would be no resurrection, and without resurrection, there would be no salvation. Judas, then, was not the villain of the story. He was the facilitator of Jesus' final liberation. His supposed betrayal was not an act of disloyalty, but of obedience to a greater purpose. The Gospel of Judas also reveals Jesus' blunt criticism of his disciples. In a significant moment, Jesus laughs at them as he finds them praying to Yahweh. You are praying to your God. You don't know who you are. For Jesus, the disciples were trapped in the illusion of Yahweh, unable to see the true God. Judas, however, understood. He saw beyond the facade and understood that the physical world was a creation of the demiurge, a spiritual prison disguised as a divine gift. This text forces us to reconsider everything we know about Judas and Jesus. If Judas was Jesus' closest disciple, the only one who really understood his mission, then why did the church demonize him? Why was the Gospel of Judas buried and labeled as heresy? The answer is clear. The truth it carries is dangerous. It destabilizes the idea that Yahweh is the supreme God and exposes the cracks in Christianity's dominant narrative. The Gospel of Judas presents Yahweh not as Jesus' Father, but as the jailer of human souls. It reveals that the crucifixion was not a tragedy, but a spiritual victory. Most importantly, he points out that Judas was not the traitor we have been taught to despise, but the instrument chosen to help Jesus fulfill his mission of liberation. This text, like many others discovered, challenges the foundations of traditional Christianity. The Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Library, for example, present a very different Yahweh from the one portrayed in the pulpits. In texts such as the War Scroll, Yahweh appears as a vengeful and belligerent God, leading massacres and demanding absolute obedience. These texts reveal a disturbing portrait of a God more akin to a warlord than a benevolent creator. The War Scroll debunks any idea of a loving and merciful God, presenting Yahweh as a ruthless leader, driven by violence and control. The Gnostics had already warned about this dark side of Yahweh, and other ancient texts, such as those found in the Nag Hammadi library, further deepen this vision. Discovered in 1945, this collection of manuscripts preserves voices that question the dominant narrative. One particularly intriguing text is the hypostasis of the archons, which presents a creation story quite different from what is described in Genesis. Hidden truths are rarely available for long. The forbidden name of Jesus is your chance to uncover what has been lost. Take it now in the first fixed comment. According to the hypostasis of the archons, the world was not created by a benevolent God. It was the work of the archons, inferior rulers led by a corrupt and jealous being, the demiurge, identified as Yahweh. In this account, the true God, a being of light and spirit, is completely separate from this imperfect physical world, which Yahweh shaped like a prison. This vision explains Yahweh's actions in the Old Testament. He was neither all-powerful nor all-loving, but a flawed creator, eager for worship and obsessed with control. The archons, his subordinates, worked tirelessly to keep humanity trapped in a cycle of ignorance and suffering, preventing us from seeing the true divine nature within us. Texts like this reveal a fundamental break in the way Yahweh was understood. Although the Church tried to silence these ideas, voices like that of Marcion of Sinope in the 2nd century could not be ignored. Marcion, one of the first Christian philosophers, openly challenged the identity of Yahweh. He argued that the God of the Old Testament could not be the same loving Father preached by Jesus. For Marcion, Yahweh was a tyrant who ruled through strict laws and severe punishments, while the true God, revealed by Jesus, was pure love and mercy. His teaching spread quickly, leading many to question the Bible's contradictions. However, the Church reacted by declaring Marcion a heretic, burning his writings and suppressing his movement. Despite the Church's efforts to erase these perspectives, ancient texts such as the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Nag Hammadi Library continue to reveal disturbing patterns. Yahweh, as described in these writings, shares characteristics with gods from other ancient cultures, such as Marduk and Bor, jealous and vengeful deities who demanded sacrifice and submission. This raises an important question. Is Yahweh just another version of these tyrannical Near Eastern gods? The Gnostics believed that Yahweh created the physical world as a trap to imprison the divine spark present in every human being. They called this spark the light, a fragment of the true God that Yahweh could never control. It is the part of us that feels that something is wrong in this world, that seeks something beyond the material illusion. For the Gnostics, Jesus' role was not to redeem the world from Yahweh, but to free humanity from its prison. He came to reveal the true God, the one who exists beyond this corrupted universe. In the Gospel of Thomas, found in the Nag Hammadi Library, Jesus says, "If you reveal what is within you, what you produce will save you. If you don't produce it, it will destroy you." This message is an invitation to explore within, to recognize the divine spark that dwells within each of us. The Gnostics believed that this spark is a fragment of the true God, the one that Yahweh tried to hide through fear, guilt, and control. For them, salvation lay not in obeying laws or fearing a jealous God, but in knowledge, Gnosis. Yahweh wanted us to believe that we are small, sinful, and dependent on Him. However, Jesus brought a radically opposite message. You are divine, eternal, and connected to something infinitely greater. This truth not only empowers, but also dismantles Yahweh's entire basis of control. The true God, in the Gnostic vision, does not demand sacrifices, punish, or condemn. He is pure light and wants us to awaken to see the world as it really is. And now that these truths have emerged from the occult texts, the question remains, what will you do with this knowledge? Can this light change the way we see everything? Leave your opinion in the comments. Are you ready to question what you've always believed? If you like the content and want to support our work so that we can continue to bring you more in-depth research and analysis, consider making a donation of $100. This contribution directly helps the channel grow and produce even richer material. Thank you very much for your support.